Hello and welcome to Architecture, Design, and Photography. Today we are going to be speaking with Troy Plota, the CEO and founder of Plotagraph, who believes artists deserve to express themselves without compromise, and it's his mission to make sure they do. Troy's journey is nothing short of inspiring, from being kicked out at age 17 for pursuing photography to surviving on $200 and dumpster meals, to then creating a multi-million-dollar photography empire, working with icons like Donald Trump, Usher, Mariah Carey, and Cardi B, and shooting at the Grammys. Today, his AI-driven tools have revolutionized digital art with Plota-verse, becoming the #1 app on the App Store, boasting 10 million plus downloads and 8 million in sales. That's nuts. His company, Plotagraph, empowers artists to animate and enhance their digital content using AI-driven tools. Troy Plota is going to be an interesting one to talk to. I'm really excited about it. This is going to focus mostly on AI and how AI enables creation and interferes with creation one way or the other. Not sure. So it'll be interesting to hear what Troy has to say about it. Also, I want to do an ad for Brick. It's called Brick, and it's just a little plastic cube, and it comes with an app that you can download that lets you brick your phone for certain aspects of what it can offer. And for me, these things have taken so much from us, but given us so much at the same time. And learning what to take and what to block is part of our experience. And Brick helps you be able to choose and manage that. And since using Brick, I would say easily my average running anxiety has gone from where it was at, say, we'll call that a 10, to probably down to a 2 to 4. I would encourage you to check out Brick and what it could do. For me, I just eliminated the ability to search the internet, Instagram, Facebook, and then any ability to look at YouTuber videos on my phone. Anyways, check out Brick. I think their product is amazing, and it gives you a lot of your life back. And then you can realize that you might have some work to do on yourself as a human. Have a nice day. Troy Plota, welcome to Architecture, Design, and Photography. I am excited to have you on because the stuff that you're doing is a lot of the stuff I've thought about, but I've never had the gumption, talent, or resources to do. So good on you. But I'm very interested in the mind of the creator, and you've had a similar path to me, but you've gone different places, different directions with it, and so it'll be very interesting to hear about that. I'd love to. I already read off an introduction, everything for you, and from your story, I'd love to hear why you were kicked out at 17 for pursuing photography, for all the others out there who might be getting kicked out at 17 for pursuing photography. When I said I was going to pursue photography, my dad laughed and said, "You'll never be able to support a family like that." And I get it. He's from a different time where,
Right.
reaching out as an artist is a huge risk. So I get it. But I did make more money than him in my first year in business, so I always rub his nose in that a little bit, just as a fun back and forth with my dad. So sorry, Roy, go ahead.
Yeah, totally. Kind of similar story. I mean, my dad was Vietnam vet, contractor, looking at his son going, I mean, at that point, I'd done photography all through high school. And then I had actually landed a great job working for a fantastic photographer. I assisted a little bit early on, and I got this job, working on TV commercials and some photo shoots. And he was just like beside himself. He's like, dude, what are you doing? Get a real job or get out of here. And I was just like, gosh, man, what do you mean? This is a real job. I can't, like, I barely made it through school, and photography was I was so passionate. Like, I just lived for photography. And so anyways, he's like, get out of here on Friday, kid, unless you have a real job. And so my buddy and I, his father was a race car driver. Actually, we had similar sort of things, right? We're like, dude, let's get out of here. What are we doing? So we packed our cars in the middle of the night and just cruised down to Miami, and just had an amazing few months of like craziest, scenarios you can imagine. But that was the start.
All right. Do you know Joe Carter?
No, sounds kind of familiar.
He's a friend of mine who of a very similar age, from New England, that went down to Miami and had a great time. Who knows? You might have run into him just wondering. That would have been amazing. So
Possibly.
I did a similar thing at 17, but I with my parents' blessing, I was like, "Hey, I want to go live on the Outer Banks during the summer, live out of my car and surf and just work at night." And they were like, "Okay." But yeah, that at 17 being able to take off and experience the world, that must have felt like something. It did for me.
Such a gift, right? Yeah, no, and my dad's great now. Like, I mean, as you say, like through the years, I've done very well as a photographer, you know, and now they're very proud of me for sure. But it's just, at that point, just like you said, different generation.
Yeah.
And it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, really.
Mm. So what was your kind of transitioning from, all right, you're leaving home on your own, going out there and probably just having a ton of fun and making a lot of poor decisions, but probably learning from it and growing and everything else like a 17-year-old free in Miami would do.
Mhm.
Where did you get to the point where you were actually like, where was your break to where you felt, like if you want to make a living as a creative, especially as a commercial creative, if you're looking at it in the same way I was, I wasn't a fine art photographer or anything else. I was looking to make a living through photography. And it's only now that I'm approaching 50 that I'm actually like trying to think about what I see and how to express that as an artist, which is a completely different thing. I wanted to specifically be able to make my living taking photographs. How did you approach that, and when did you feel like, "Ah, I'm actually doing it," you know?
Yeah, it's good. So I started off as kind of a generalist. I was a fine art photographer as well, but I knew I needed to make a living. So would do both. And I would say, all right, I'm just going to get this job and I'm going to do the next thing to save up for the money, for the gear, to do my art projects, which I did throughout the years. Um, and then, so I'd say like, I opened my first studio when I was 21 and it was in Atlanta. And actually we have similar. So I grew
Oh,
up
wow.
surfing. I was like surf skate rat, right?
Are
And
you in Indo currently?
no, I was. Well, no, actually, I
Okay.
was in
Oh,
Thailand for 8 months.
alright. I was just
I
gonna
was in
be
Thailand.
really, really jealous if you're currently in Indo, that's all.
No, my son was last week though. Uh,
Ah, where at?
he was in
Was he, like,
Canggu.
out in the Mentawais or Canggu? Okay. We
Yeah,
did, the Mentawais, geez, probably, like, 10 years ago with a few buddies on a surf trip. That was amazing. Just just amazing place, but sorry. Side note.
yeah, definitely fun, definitely fun. So I grew up surfing, skating. Went to Daytona Beach Community College for photography. I don't know if you remember that
Mm,
school, but it's one of
mm,
the top photography schools. It was like FIT, was no, RIT was in New York, and then you had
yep,
Brooks in Santa Barbara,
yep.
and then you had Daytona Beach Community College actually, and that was the one that
Hmm.
I could afford, and it was closer to home, and it had surf. So I surfed, did my photography, and then I met my wife actually while I was working for MTV down there, and I
Oh,
chased
wow.
her up to Atlanta. So I dropped out of photography school, went to Atlanta. I spent 10 years. It's actually almost all of the 90s I spent in Atlanta with no waves. So it's like I never had been landlocked. I know, right?
That's rough.
So, but I know. So I just had to shoot. I was just, like that's all I did is, dove in my photography. 21 started my own studio, and I've never, up until 9 years ago when I started my tech company, it's all I ever did is work as a photographer. A
Mm.
lot of fashion, advertising, and celebrity.
How did you transfer from such a creative way of interacting to actually then producing, directing, and creating a business around this app? This is the first I'm hearing of the app, which I'm imagining is kind of hilarious that I'm interviewing and don't know about this app and that I'm a photographer. But when AI has come into the photography world, I haven't I still am kind of unsettled on how AI integrates into our lives and everything else and what it means. So this is a really interesting conversation. But my
Mhm.
reaction photographically for when AI came in was to back away from anything to do with manipulating the image for me. It became a little more like I don't know, maybe an embittered response to say, I'm not going to do anything other than this is what I saw. I don't know if that's the right response or not. It's only kind of the pushback I had in the moment. I'd love to hear more about your thought of just the different personality to be able to be, for one, the founder and leader of an app, which is a different skill set, which is a different personality to be able to make this company and this app out of your creative experience coming to that point. But then also, how do you become that person that now owns a company? Because as a creative, I know the sensitivities that make you valuable also rob you of that sensibility will rob you of the way that you can be effective or happy if you don't uh if you don't nurture yourself and everything with how much that takes from you. It just as a creative, I know that's a serious thing to consider. So I'm curious how you transitioned to being this very different person, and how you've managed that, and what it looked like over that graph of time.
Okay, I've got a question for you. So going back earlier in your question, were you talking about Photoshop as far as you said AI, but did you mean retouching or do you actually mean AI as far as in your images?
I In this instance, for me, in the last like 2 years, it's been
Huh.
primarily about just moving pixels, right? So actually, what I saw working towards putting yourself in that exact spot where the light comes through that lens and lands on that like if you were there, this is what you saw. And how much I influenced that to tell of the reality of what this was that I was seeing. I'm just very consciously stepped back from manipulating that too much, just as a response to what I was seeing in AI. Because previously, I felt like I was AI trying to move and create as a craftsperson within a digital realm. But now
Okay.
AI can do that far better than I can personally. So that craft of manipulating pixels within, it's more now the concept by far than the ability to craft person meticulously adjust pixels. AI can do it far better than me. So how do I
Right.
how do I respond and create in that way now differently? As being someone who for his whole life it was all me really with these other tools of Photoshop or Lightroom and everything else. Now there's this trajectory up of a complete change, which change is chaos, which is opportunity, which is incredible and fun, and sometimes great, and sometimes bad, and sometimes both. So,
Right. Okay. So kind of we go back to Photoshop when Photoshop first came out, and then we would hear like was it mid '90s or whatever. No, you can't manipulate your picture. That's cheating, and that's not even really a photograph anymore. We went through that,
oh yeah,
and I was the guy, the very like, how can I manipulate this image? Like, how can I make this better as best as can be? Um, and then digital cameras came out, and then you had the photographers who were like, digital will never overtake film, and I'll only ever shoot film. I was the first guy with a digital camera as fast as I can get it. I had the first billboard in Times Square shot with a digital camera. So my trajectory as an artist, I get bored with just traditional photography. Like I've been doing it for
yeah.
so long. I think I started like 1983 or something like that. So for me, it's like, what's the new tool? What's the new thing to have fun with? And so that's kind of what I've done. In 2013, I did a TED Talks entitled "The Future of Photography." And I had a keynote that was 132 pages deep of the different things that I had projected as far as what's going to happen with photography. And
How
I
accurate was it
pretty
up to this
accurate.
point?
Yeah, I mean, I had definitely a lot of things kind of lined up. You know what? The one thing that was interesting though that didn't happen, it kind of did, but not really, is within that I was doing a lot of photogrammetry, like shooting 3D back in 2012, and I invented this process of doing that. And so I was in New York City. I was living in Silver Towers on 42nd Street, and I had this concept and this idea for VR because we're talking about the metaverse and VR and all that kind of stuff. So I started a company we started to raise money for shooting for this VR content. Well, my partner ended up having a midlife crisis and backing out on me like right a couple months at the beginning. But I had gotten all these quotes. One quote for code for apps and stuff. One one was like for 1.2 million, 900,000, $500,000. So I had all these quotes. And then, but the very last, the cheapest one was this concept that I had called Plotagraph. And this is where pixel shifting came in, where I projected, you could take a still photograph, shift the pixels in a way that your eye actually can't detect, and then create an app of that. I was doing that it took 5 different apps in order to create it. It took a long time. You could only export a GIF. I said, if anybody could ever create an app that could do this pixel shifting, it would be great. And it would really help photographers, because now at that point, I'm in New York City, our day rates are going down. They want us to shoot video while we're shooting still. So we're shooting video. And then, so we're like, oh my gosh. So I said, this app, this concept that I have would really help photographers get some of these budgets that's happening for video. So anyways, I got some usage, an MGM shoot that I did a few years before that. And right when this happened, I got this usage for MGM for they wanted to, buy some more usage. So, all right, I'm going to take this MGM money. I'm going to do this app. So anyways, I do the app, it blows up. Let me go backwards here. We did $230,000 in the first 2 weeks in beta. Okay.
Whoa.
So if you've seen, on Instagram, all the platforms, if you see a still photograph and parts of it are moving, not a cinematograph, not a video stuff, but it's called a Plotograph. I got 5 patents on pixel shifting. And during this time, I was patent pending. Apple calls me and says, hey, what you've developed here is going to change photography as we know it. And I said, yeah, I mean, like it's blowing up, like we had like 4,000 followers on Instagram, like clockwork every week. We're just killing it. So they said, all right, we want you to speak at WWDC, and we want to present this at WWDC. Yeah. So I actually ended up going to Cupertino, flying my team in, and we built it in Cupertino. Can't say exactly where I built it, but it was in Cupertino. Okay. So Apple makes me an offer while we're there.
Was this the thing that you could have taken a wave and had it look like it was kind of moving endlessly, but not that was your program?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So Brian Bielman.
All right. I remember seeing that initially.
Yeah. Brian Bielman he blew up this shot. Yeah. So Brian's my bud. But I'm like, Brian, let's animate some of your photography. And so that's how we ended up blowing up. And so, which is so cool, right? So go backwards, and here I am, like doing photography, and then surf. The surf industry helps me kind of blow up with this app, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah. So anyways, that was basically where we just, like I said, we're going gangbusters. Apple makes me an offer while we're there to buy me. Okay. Out of the blue, they make an offer. I've told this story many times. I declined the offer. They end up sending me home.
Why?
Lowball offer. Lowball. Come on.
Yeah, okay.
So up till date, my technology has now done hundreds of millions of dollars of sales. And they offered me $10 million while I was there.
Okay. So they're just kind of hoping you'd kind of hope for cash out. And yeah.
But
they impress you with the come on out and speak, and then we'll buy it out from under you.
Yep, exactly. And so, it's okay. I understand why they would do that, but I wish, if they would offer something more real for what it was, it would have made more sense. But so anyway, so they send me home. They canceled me speaking WWDC. They send me home. Yeah. The app goes to #1 in the App Store. Yeah. They're like, get out of here, sucker.
Wow. Yeah. You got closed out.
Yeah. Totally closed out. But so we did almost $700,000 in the first month. App goes to number one in the App Store. And then it was just a phenomenon. It's like literally we bumped some companies out of first place who'd been there for a while. And then they call us a couple months later. They said, hey, this is such a phenomenon. They're like, you're like the unicorn company, blah, blah, blah. You're in the Apple family, all this stuff. We've chosen Plotagraph to be the giveaway app for the release of the iPhone 10. So they want to promote iPhone 10 with Plotagraph as a giveaway. And I said, well, we're kind of doing millions of dollars in sales, and I'm okay with this, but what are you going to do? They're like, oh, don't worry about it. We're going to feature you. I signed a contract for 800,000 units. That's supposed to last 3 months. But once again, you remember back in the day, man, it was blowing up, right? So I signed the contract. We depleted those units in 6 days. They literally just went, usually they choose 3 apps a year to do this with. So I signed another contract for another 1 million units. They give away almost $6 million of my app away for free. Okay. So it is what it is. They've never featured me ever for doing that. Next thing you know, my app is on my competition released the exact same app that Apple's promoting that does hundreds of millions of dollars of sales.
So what'd you do? Did you lawyer up?
What am I doing? So we ended up going in. We'll go through this. I want to talk creative, but this is obviously a big part of our story. So we had an $80 million lawsuit in federal court with the competition. They won. The 82-year-old judge stripped my patents from me.
They won. And they stripped your patents. Okay.
Yep. The 82-year-old judge says, this looks like a Mickey Mouse cartoon I saw when I was a little girl. They probably shouldn't have given these patents. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So anyway, we ended up going to federal court. The company goes to the patent office. And so while we're waiting for court in the appeals court, they go to the patent office. They pay the patent office to pull up all my patents to say, you should never have given these patents. Patent office pulls it up. Of course, the pros of the world. I mean, who knows more than the patent office, right? In the United States. They pull it up, go over all 5 patents. These patents are perfect. There's no prior art. We did exactly our job. All the attorneys' job. We did our job. These patents are proper. We get back to court. These 3 judges, I think it's 3 judges, had no idea what they're doing. And they upheld the judge that my patents shouldn't be proper, that they shouldn't be given. So I lost. So it's just been years in court dealing with this, right? So now, long story short, a month ago, I got my patent back. I had one more in the wings that we resubmitted, got my patent back for pixel shifting. So we're back at it. And in the meantime, I've been building, and this is one of the topics of our conversation here. In the meantime, I've been building the world's first all AI social platform. And while I've been kind of in the wings for doing all this, I've been back in the lab. I've been creating, I've been partnering with a lot of these AI companies. And I've been seeing what's happening with AI, what the future holds for content creators, for photographers, for videographers. For me, that's my passion. Not only now in creating, which I've been doing my whole life, but helping content creators. I've had the most fantastic life. I want to share it. How can I help creators? So that's what I'm doing right now, both with my tools, with the pixel shifting AI, and with my social platform. And so that's really my passion, is to help people create the best they can.
I'm interested to hear more about the social platform you're mentioning, because I keep having this conversation with fellow photographers that Instagram used to be a photo sharing app. Now it's just a waste. It's a time sink that you can scroll through a bunch of advertisements and a bunch of social crap. But I just want a nice way to share inspiring images back and forth, but it's always got to turn into some bigger picture of let's suck you in and do all this crap. And it's just, why can't it just be, inspiration and sharing? So what do you got?
Inspiration without a lot of copy on top of it, with just really like, ways for artists to really promote themselves. So that's what I've created.
Interesting.
Everything that you
And
hate about Instagram, I fixed. And it is a
what's it called?
proper, it's called Plotaverse.
Okay. All right. So it's through Plotaverse. All right. Okay.
Yep. Yep. So what we've created, my team and I now it's really like, it's special. Like, we're really excited about it. I did a soft launch on iOS, and next week we're launching on Android. So by the time probably your podcast comes out here, it'll be live everywhere, including desktop. So, like you said, you can open up Instagram and Facebook and you're like, which is which? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's snuck up on us. And so artists haven't really had that great of a place to promote, present, and, learn. So I also have a built-in digital magazine that teaches artists, and also it connects brands with artists as well. So really, it's very well thought out, and it's probably one of the most amazing things I've ever done. Like, Plotagraph blew up, and that was really fun. And Plotagraph now is a part of that app, which is great. But this social platform is really a way for artists to really expand and to learn and to really monetize as well.
Tell me more about the driving center of this social app, in that it's communicating through visual and connecting people through visual. What is the value and what is the difference and the improvement over like Instagram and Facebook? I got an idea in my head of what I want, and I just want to see if you created it, like if my pre-idea, whatever. But yeah, what's the core?
Okay, the core is the main feed is super clean. So at this point now, we don't need what I call it, like power users is what it's made for. So the interface is very minimalistic. So you're really celebrating the images and the content, easily to swipe over, to make comments. But the profile page is set up as your website, basically. It's totally customizable. This is where all the other apps fail, okay? Is like, as a photographer, as content creator, even AI, content creators, you get stuck with a niche. Like, if you're somewhat of a generalist and you like to shoot architecture, or you like to shoot people, or you have a certain style with AI, I've made it to where you create collections. So on your profile page, you could literally have different collections for how your work is presented. So you're no longer stuck with just one particular look. You can go on and have your collections, and it's presented very professionally. It's almost like mini magazines. And so I think that's one of the things that's setting us apart. And then we are going to have it set up too, where artists can actually sell their content as well. So these are like how to monetize. And on top of it, it's not just like, okay, I get to sell my content, but we're partnering actually with a company that legitimately registers your content with the government. So it's like, basically it's legit. It's not you saying, oh yeah, this is my photo, because we have over 10 million downloads on this app in the past few years. And how do you know if somebody really owns it? So now we have the first platform that really legit, hey, if I want to buy that, if I want to hire this photographer, this is really his work, or I could really purchase this content.
Right.
And it's registered.
Now I just got a like, and it comes with that content credential thing. I've never really used it, but is that something that integrates with the app in that sense, and registering it with the government and all that you're saying?
That's something that would really even fast track it even faster. I think the whole process takes 5 minutes, but it's kind of like, did you create this? And like you said, with Leica, with this technology that they have, just include that in it. It just that much more shows that you're the actual owner of that creator.
Now with Plotaverse, what about, like, if I'm looking as a professional photographer who's a commercial architectural photographer and working and developing what I see as a fine art photographer? I went backwards to what you did. I'm getting to the point now where I'm moving away from technology towards film. And at the beginning, I was full in, like, I want all the manipulatability as possible. I am not worried about what it looked like when I was there. I have an idea that I want to execute on. And in that sense, back then, it was very challenging for me because I had to do all the work and all the heavy lift of crafting and blah, blah, blah. Now it's a little bit more so I want to see what the restriction of working in an older way and showing this I can actually do. Because if I can do it in that way, I know I have some talent, at least in the light and composition part of it. And then as I'm solid on that, I can bring all this other stuff in if I want to create whatever I want later. So great. What if I want to bring my whole Instagram feed over or whatever else that I've been spending all this time building that everyone is like liked and is known? And then I have to like transfer hundreds of images over onto this new app. Is there a way or is there a potential way of saying, I want to migrate over kind of thing? Is that something that has been a thought in this process? Or
Well, kind of, but here's the catch. On our platform, there has to be some kind of AI built into it, right?
Okay.
That's the problem. It's the world's first all AI social platform, so there has to be something. Because right now, what we're getting
Oh,
calls from are the brands going, "Hey, okay, we're in on AI. It's super scary. What do we do?" But because we know that we're going to save money on our budgets and we're competing now with all the other brands. So, but what this does, what's really cool,
oh,
yeah, it gives the smaller brands a leg up. Now the smaller brands could be like, hey, our content could look just as good as theirs. So that's kind of more
hmm.
the world that I'm in right now. As far as what you're talking about, going more as a traditionalist, totally appreciate that. I mean, we all go through our
Yeah,
waves,
no.
and who knows if I don't do that too. But but right now I'm just on this like a kid in a candy store in
Yeah, yeah,
AI.
yeah.
What how can I get past the physical limitations of the physical universe? You know, and
So
if mhm,
so Plotaverse is Plotaverse or Plotaverse?
Plotaverse.
Plot Plotverse. So it's geared toward showing the creativity that individuals can produce or companies can produce with like no digital limitations. Kind of, it's almost more so that you're interacting with AI to create something, and then the individual is the owner of that creation, even though it was a combined effect with AI.
Yes, but there's that in between spot too, right? So I was in Paris
Okay.
2 weeks ago. I was at the blockchain event in Paris, speaking there, and I met with Ellen von Unwerth's team. Are you familiar
Hmm.
with Ellen von Unwerth?
Mm-mm.
No. Longtime celebrity photographer, celebrity advertising photographer, um, but just amazing. So they're like,
Hmm.
okay, Troy, what do we do with this? What can we do? Because Ellen, her work
Right.
is very, once again, unique. I would say, I'm trying to think of somebody who you know that'd be similar. But
I,
she's
for
always
some
pushing
reason,
on.
don't know remember names.
Yeah, I
So
know, I hear you. I hear you. But when you pull up Ellen Von Newith, you'd be like, oh yeah, I know that photographer. I know her work.
yeah, I'd
Um,
recognize the work. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So anyway, so we're talking with them about like say her doing like a show, like a traditional show. And so one of the things that I like to focus on, one thing I would love to chat with you about too, is I love presenting art on digital screens, framed, beautifully framed digital screens, and having those screens actually light the space. So it's not only just about the art, but it's about like say
Yeah.
at night, to like as a designer, as an interior designer, can you imagine just like having the like kind of specializing and having these pieces there. So Ellen wants to do a traditional show, but have a couple of these AI enhanced sort of like whatever it is that she's going to do with no physical limitations. So
Mm.
it's kind of like you kind of match the both. You take your traditional photography and go, by the way, I really would have loved, I don't know, some kind of like wild something or other
Yeah.
dragon flying in the background. Who the heck knows? It's like anything is possible. Whatever you're even thinking, it could happen now. And so my
Yeah.
job is to help deliver the tools to make that happen.
That's a interesting thing to see how it could open up to almost show here's the traditional form. Like it was shot on film, printed and framed, but then the growth of this to that is actually the entire wall behind the photo framed and for sale on the wall or whatever. Yeah, there's a whole different ton of layers that you could play with and manipulate there to create the desired end that the artist would be doing initially through that more limited medium of camera, printing, and paper. Now you've got all that additional movement, even within a still image, to manipulate and create, which is really interesting. That
Or
we
you take that
my
image
my oh, go ahead.
that you take that classic image that you shot in the 80s, like this image, you've seen it a zillion times, you've sold it many times, and then all of a sudden you're like, bring it to life, have the model slash celebrity do this, and all of a sudden it's alive. Like literally,
Right.
like you can't even tell that it wasn't actually shot. So, and anyways, it's just mind-boggling as far as what's happening right now. And then this is just the beginning. So it's just the technology is gonna keep getting better. So what I'm interested in, once again, in photography specifically, and even helping photographers monetize, is what I've been doing for a while. Is what are the tools that can be given? Now, like for example, like back in the day, we had great budgets. We had 8
Mm.
assistants on set. We got literally 30 people on set. Those budgets are long gone, right? At
Yeah.
least from what I've seen. And so now you don't need those budgets to get that lighting. You don't need that lighting pack because you can have that created. You can have it brought in and tweaked however you want. Even though it's the same place, you can just change the lighting through the pixels. So it's just, I don't know. It just helps things be the best that they can be.
That'll be interesting to see its effect on architectural photography, because there's a, there, I think each one of us is starting to think like, all right, how much time do I have left working? Because AI and robotics are a real thing. And I have a hard time thinking, what could they not replace? AI and creativity. That to me is a really interesting thing to consider, because the thing I found through AI and in interacting with it a lot is it's an amazing tutor. Any information you want of how to do anything, it can just straight teach you, and you can go and implement it, go through that process, do it, and move on. It's a companion. It's a philosophical sounding board. It's everything you need it to be. What is the creative process in humans that you've worked through that now has is being amalgamated? What do you see AI as that new gear within our system of how to create? What do you how do you kind of think of that and integrate it into, while keeping the depth of insight and the voice of the artist still in there, while introducing all this incredibly powerful technology within that?
Well, for me, I I don't know if I think of it as a gear, which it could be a gear, but I think of it as a tool. It's just like a tool in your
Hmm.
tool belt, right? And one of the things that's happening right now is like we have a few projects coming up where we're helping brands, and we have our creators doing different things that are in the commercial realm, right? It's not easy. This is the whole thing. It's not as easy as everybody thinks it is. Like any other tool. It's like the camera. It's like you're going from film to digital, and you have some different buttons in there, and it just it's art in itself. Learning the AI and which tools do what, because there's so many tools out there. So one of the things that we're doing is we're as fast as we can. We're learning, and it changes daily which tool does what and what it's good for, and then as we know, as commercial photographers, the client is going to be very specific on things. Right now you could like throw a bunch of stuff at the wall with your prompting and get like this magnificent image. Let's say we're in fashion. That's where I kind of come from, that fashion background. And you've got the merch, you've got the dress perfect or whatever, but then all of a sudden the designer's like, that's not where the seam is. you know? And they go, yeah, or I don't want that wrinkle right there. But it took you 100 prompts. It took you 100 times to get to that, So how do you get that wrinkle out of it? And it's not quite there, to where you can just erase it, or, you can, but it's just a lot of trial and error. In the long run, it still saves budget, it still saves time, and it still saves money. And ideally, one of the things that I like to talk about is freeing up our time to spend more time with friends, family, and nature. So,
Hmm.
have you seen, like, on social media, there's that one quote that's going around that says, "We actually are spending more time working right now than back in like hundreds of years ago, like the
Well,
peasants."
that was going to be my comeback is that, we've gotten tools and we think they're going to give us more time. And what they do is they just take all our time and make us that much more productive, which was what we were trying to do from the start. We just go right by all the wisdom that would say, dude, slow down. You don't need to accomplish everything. So there is that ability in AI to let us slow down and to be more present. But it's hard to let that undermine our greed. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
here's my point. Here's my point: is let's get all this corrected, right? Let's look. Why do we have starving people on this earth anymore? Like, let's fix this stuff, and then get to the point to where we talk about, like, gosh, do you remember how much we used to have to work back in when I was a kid? So that's the goal: is to let AI take a lot of these things. Let's correct what's happening with in the world, and we're at the age now where it's our job to really kind of step up in as humans in our respective communities to really do something about this for our kids and for our grandkids. So
Right.
I see AI as a helpmate with that.
Yeah. I absolutely see AI as something like the way I'm starting to interact with it is it saves me a day of research to find a thing or a tool
Yeah.
that works for or a resource to get it. It just takes all the asking Google and searching and going through all the. It's just kind of like, yeah, and here's the link. You go and get it. It's like, oh, thank you. I can move on with my day and do more things. That the next thing though that worries me on that from my personal experience is that I've gone from and you might have experienced this as well, going from understanding that you have to survive and you need to make money and then knowing how fragile that is, especially through doing it as a creative, like to make a living as a creative. Good luck. You're one of the very, very few, as am I, that can actually make their living off of doing something just just creative. Like we get paid to do that, or you did, and now you've created something else and you're selling a product repetitiously, which is a situation I would love to be in. But that process of creativity, that working through, gosh darn it, where was my point before I got sidetracked on making multiple things and selling? It like pirated my greed and lost my train of thought.
Well, just as far
Uh,
as how we've been very fortunate to make a living at being creatives, and what's coming with
mm.
that, and
Okay, so
honestly, okay,
here's the
go
point
ahead.
I was trying to make. There's something in gaining success where you then lose the thing that was driving you. And then if it was survival that was driving you and now you have survival, you then have to reassess, well, what was I surviving for? Because the surviving gave you the reason to do everything that you did if that was your driving thing. And being as young as I was and as, I don't know. It's just like once I got to the point where I had enough money to survive and I couldn't deny that, there's a falling out of your emotions that are all kind of like, what do I do now? Like what's the meaning? Like I don't have the pressure and then joy of realizing I'm trying to survive and having these accomplishments and I'm surviving. Once you get to that point of kind of like societal as a society, once you get to a point of everyone's doing fine, there's some famous quote where if all we have to bother ourselves with is consumption and reproduction of the species, the first thing we'll do is just blow it up. And I'm worried, like, maybe I'm gonna write a manifesto here and move into a cabin eventually. But I worry about I worry about getting everything you want and losing the struggle for what it teaches you. And I don't know what to do with that. Other than, geez, ask AI and see what it says, and it'll probably tell you something really wise, which Freaking creeps me out.
Well, okay, so here's another thought, and here's another thing as far as like if things do get easier. Um, I never really worked out most of my life. I was just, shooting on set. I gained a lot of weight throughout the years. And so now, lately, I've been working out and putting a lot of effort into, being healthy, right?
You look pretty good from
So,
biceps up here. So from
I
biceps
mean,
up.
better, it's better than I was 10 years ago. So if you do have time, you're not working your butt off and you're under all the stress, you can maybe get in the gym, get outside, do some hiking. I think that especially as men, I only speak for myself as a man, we're very competitive. No matter what's going to happen, we're going to find a way to try to be the best at whatever it is that we're going to do.
Yep.
So I don't know. I think I have faith in humanity that we'll find enough to do, enough to compete with each other with, and make things better.
Yeah, I've found just I think anyone who's on the downside of 40 goes through a reassessment of the midlife crisis thought process of like, all right, I've done all this. I'm in a place where I can continue to accomplish, but then what's that do more? That gets me more management, more money, and no problems. So that ability to give back, if people are introspective enough in that moment, I think there's that ability to give back that becomes a driver. So in the product that you're creating, there's that ability to give the interaction of creativity to lessen the requirement for craftsmanship within the act of to let people interact with creativity more seamlessly and on a quicker timeline. The same thing that digital photography did for film photography. When I started out, right when I started was when digital passed film as far as its ability for resolution in the 35 format. And in a lot of my ability to make a living and do that was because, like you were saying, I interacted with all the abilities of creativity because I learned Photoshop in architecture school for putting like trace and other things together to be able to just print off one presentation rather than have to draw every single little thing that was on a presentation. And so then when I started working as an architectural photographer rather than an architect, I had that tool in my back pocket and I didn't know how to use the strobes and everything I was using. And they just looked like these harsh lights coming in. So I'd, just naturally shoot everything natural light bracketed, and then I'd add light where I needed it, but then I'd take out the harsh shadow lines that it created and everything else. And I realized immediately, like, oh, there's this whole world where you can not have to place 30 lights in. You could just use one light 30 times and play around with that and see what you get. And so that process of thinking ingenuitively to get to a desired end result in creativity, to give people those tools. I mean, I've done the exact same thing in a more antiquated, way for myself in doing what I do commercially. How the other thing I've come to think about is if you're an astronaut on the space shuttle, well, when we had a space shuttle, let's go for space station, and you go out to do a spacewalk, you take tools with you, and you have a tether to go out there and do this thing and come back. I often look at those who are creative are essentially leaving the safety of the town. If we think of it like in an old timey way, right? There's a village that outside the village during the day, great, go out in the fields, do all your stuff, but there's wolves out there and lions potentially, yada, yada, yada. You come back in the village at night and you're safe. You build that village so you have a place to rejuvenate and be safe and lay your head down at night. The people that are creative, metaphorically, are leaving the village to try and go find something new to bring back of value. Not real physical like water or resources kind of thing, but intellectually, spiritually, emotionally. The creatives go out in the world and risk their reputation of being a productive member of society, essentially, to come back and say, I haven't done normal things, but I've really contributed. And if they can contribute through that art, they're kind of hoisted onto the shoulders of everyone of the village and highly, highly rewarded. if they leave the safety of the village to go and create, to bring something back, and what they do isn't good enough, they're regarded as someone who kind of just flaked off, or at least disregarded the laws of the village or the norms of the village and didn't come back with anything useful. And at that point, they're burnt at the stake, like a prophet or someone else who, and to me, that's a really interesting thing, that now we're sending creatives out of the village, but they have better tools to help them understand in the subjective experience of taking everything in as an artist would subjectively, to then transfer it into something objective, something that is even like a small rectangular representation on a phone. You can make a series of pixels that will have an epiphany on someone's life just by looking at it, depending on
Right.
how you arrange it. So it does not have to be anchored in reality other than the truth that we experience. And that is art, that is creativity. And today we can interact with art and create art on a much more time crunch than we ever could before, which doesn't make it more valuable or less valuable. I don't think it just, it makes it more present and within reach of people who at the primary source. I think you need art for yourself if you're generating that art. And if it's not primarily generated for something that you need to express or something that you specifically think you saw, that's the primary first thing. That if you're not doing that, it's not really going to be worth much beyond that. Because if it doesn't mean something to you, it's not going to mean something to anything else. And in this tool that you've created, now people can express those things in a much more in a much, not repetitive, but in a quicker turnaround. That's the issue of why I became an architectural photographer, is because my creative attention span was too short to interact with and then create on an architectural time scale. I mean, it's years and years sometimes of work before there's any completion. And my attention span in that sense was just not having it. So, good on you for creating something like that. I'm gonna check this out and start playing with it. I'll open up a account and see what I can create, because this is a really interesting thing to check out, to see how to amalgamate it with real imagery and created imagery just out of the Plotaverse. So that'll be really cool. What else? What else? Talking points are there within this that you think are really valuable to touch on?
Well, one of the things that you just brought up is I love how you talk about the hero's journey, basically, and how
Mm,
you relate that as being an artist. And
yeah,
that's really
I've never
cool.
called it that. That's yeah, you're right. Yeah,
That's what
that
it's called. It's called the hero's
interesting.
journey. Is you go out of the
I
village, you learn all this stuff, and you bring it back to your tribe, and you're like, look what I found. And hopefully you
it's
got a good tribe. And hopefully they don't burn you at the stake, which occasionally they do. Um, but what's really cool, what's interesting, what
on
you said,
honestly though, screw the village. It's not what about makes them comfortable. It's about what's true. Screw the
yeah,
village. I'm sorry, but an artist cannot be concerned with the reception of their work. Now, when I say that, I mean I have to tell you what's true, regardless of how it makes you feel sometimes. Not you, but people that I have a relationship with that I'm close. Sometimes I
mhm,
got to say something to you that you're not going to like at all, but it might be the most important thing for you to hear. And that is the place of art in a lot of instances.
true. And then it comes with the concept and the idea. So now we've been stuck with Hollywood for decades. And Hollywood has the budgets for whatever it is that they wanted to create and for whatever
Mm,
agenda they want to push, right? So now here you have artists who can create images, short videos, short films, and soon to be feature films without the budgets needed for Hollywood. It's just what they're thinking.
right.
So, what's that hero wanting to portray? What is it that they're wanting to say? And now, through prompting, through the tools, through everything that's coming out right now, they're going to be able to create a full feature length film of what they're thinking, and whenever they want to put those pixels together, like you were saying, to
Mm.
portray that emotion or portray that sentiment that they're wanting to get across. And that's, as an artist, if say back in the day, say a few hundred years ago, you're not really a very good drawer or painter, but you have got really great ideas, and you're very intellectual, but you really had no way of really presenting it. Now, more than any time in humanity, you don't have to be a good drawer or painter, right? And a lot of people unfortunately think of, and as a photographer, you know this, like a lot of photographers say, well, I'm not an artist, I'm a photographer. Like, come on, there's not really many painters left anymore, so whatever it is that we're presenting or our ideas, what are the tools? And then once again, what are you making somebody feel? What is it that you're wanting this idea that you have to get out? And that's, as artists, that's what we do, is we feel and we understand a little bit more as far as like, wanting to kind of communicate whatever that is, whether you care about what somebody says or not. And that's always the journey for an artist too, is to get their message across from their heart.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing that if you're creating art for what you think people want, it's just not worth anything. It's funny. Like
That's
if you
not
come from
true.
that place of creation.
No, because you and
Well,
I were commercial
commercially.
photographers. We were commercial photographers. So, right. So
Well,
this is where
that's not art though. I
Oh,
mean,
no, listen, my dad's a sheet metal contractor, and he creates the most
mhm.
beautiful hoods out of stainless steel. And when I was a kid, I'd be like, Dad, you're such an artist. I'm not an artist. I'm a sheet metal company. Like, I don't know. Like, that look to me is very artful in what you did. And I would say even hundreds of years ago, somebody creating a chair out of wood or whatever it is, that's artfully done.
Yeah, it's the argument around like Norman Rockwell. Like a lot of people call that not art because it was commissioned before with an idea too. And I totally get what you're saying and agree with that. I divide the two up in my mind. If I have someone who has an expectation and they expect me to work with them on that, it's to me it moves from art to a creative problem solving exercise where every bit of my experience that I pay attention to is the warehouse of experience that I pull from to creatively problem solve for an individual in an aesthetic or intellectual or emotional communication. Now, if I'm creating art, for me, in my personal definition, if I'm doing something like that, I have to completely disregard what anyone else is going to think, and I have to express exactly what I see without feeling that I'm being watched or observed. And that to me is just a different thing that allows for the the harsh things that come into our reality that we're not noticing are already there, that are important. So
Well, the concept in Bali, right? Where they say, we don't have art museums because everything we do is art, right? There's
yeah,
some kind of
different
quote like that.
cultures are different, yet way better in that sense. Like ours in America, eh, yeah, we're just get get acquire get
It's
acquire.
different. That's why you get on the road a little bit. I've been traveling now for 3 years, and it's funny because I love Thailand. By the way, I found this little island. What's that show that's out right now? White Lotus.
Oh yeah,
Have you heard of this show? I've been living
yeah,
on the island next to the White Lotus location.
really.
So amazing. Like, there's a lot of expats, a lot of European expats, but the Indonesian culture in Bali is much different, similar, but and like you said, travel around the world. There's different sort of aspects of that. But I've always been more like everything I do is kind of in an artful sort of way, whether I'm paid to do it or not. And I
Mm.
also I've been obviously a people shooter. Like I've shot a lot of celebrities throughout the years. Um, and there's an art for me as far as dealing with, like, I've shot Trump multiple times, shot Bill Clinton, Hillary, Mariah Carey. Like I've got like shot a lot, like everybody controversial apparently. you know
Clinton and
But
Trump in the same photo. Yeah.
not in the, no, it wasn't the same photos, different times, different years.
But
Um,
if you could, that would be like ultimately controversial.
as an art piece. But you know, have you seen
Right.
the AI that's happening? Like right now, that you got them, you've got Trump and whoever holding hands and skipping through
I love
through the
those.
field. I know it's fun. It's just kind of like I don't know, something interesting about it.
Yeah, it in some way, our ability to kind of release a little bit of a pressure valve on all these power mongers. It is, yeah, weird thing, very weird thing. But
Yeah.
well,
And
Troy,
once
this has
again, the
been
artists are leading the way. The artists are like, "Hey, this is my thought. This is my take on it." And as always within society, artists lead the way, whether it's
yeah,
going out of the
and
nose and coming back.
I believe the artists lead the way in the same way that the I always so I had a very close relationship with religion growing up, and the thing I found when I was distancing myself from that was that art and religion definitely pick at the same void, uh, and they do it in the same process. It's just like one's a more conscientious, objectifying form of it, and one is another kind of more expressive form of trying to say what they feel that is not in existence or has not been objectified yet. And when you run into the truth that you recognize but have never seen before, that's when you kind of um, get to, for me, get to feel and experience art when you recognize it, but you've never seen it. That's the thing. And now with your app, we have that ability to start moving through all those patterns kind of more quickly and showing them. So maybe there's a lot of hope with AI in that sense. And I have a lot of hope with AI to begin with, but you also have chirping in your ear all the people who are deeply afraid of it as well, which I don't think they're misguided. They're looking at the potential, and the potential is within our grasp, and it's within conversations like this that awareness comes into being, and hopefully we grow and develop with our technology and don't get consumed by it as we have in the past. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, it's up to us. It's up to us as a collective for sure.
Yeah, yeah. We'll see. Let's hope it goes well for us all. Who knows? Thank you so much for taking the time and for making this app. I'm excited to jump into it and to see what it feels like to play around with far less limitations in simply bringing something. Good girl, you kind of created the ability to start to be a god in a little like you get to speak things into existence. I mean, as far as like, that's interesting that to be able to talk to something and then it comes into existence is, yeah, that
Powerful.
is it's a new thing that we haven't, without engaging another human consciousness. We can do this now, where before you would get like a check from another human, even if they were like your captured slave in Egypt that you were making do everything. You had to interact with other humans to get things done, and now we can simply speak things into a digital existence. Which, let's see where that goes.
We'll
This is a
see.
fun time. Quite a fun time.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. Well, where can more people find out about, well, other than being the number one app in the App Store at times, right? Where can people go to find out more about what you're doing, talks you're giving, things you're creating, and the app and everything else?
Plotaverse.com, Plota verse.com. That's where it has all the links. And then if you're on iOS or Android, it's super simple. You just look for Plotaverse.
All right. Troy Plota, thank you for coming on and sharing everything with us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Trent. Great talk. Appreciate it very much.